Good morning, buenos dias. Thank you for being with us. If you give us a moment, we're going to pull up our presentation, and we will also be streaming this on YouTube. So if you have a moment or you can tell anyone, you can go to Cowles and Thompson's YouTube webpage and hit on live, and we will be streaming on there as well. Give us just a moment. Thank you. All right, good morning. Let's see. Thank you for joining us today for this brief presentation on this new process for Venezuelans. This was a process that was announced on October 12th, so it's still fresh and still new, and I'm hoping that we can give you a little bit of information about how this could help some of your loved ones or even folks that you know, or perhaps you just want to know what this whole process is really about and who it's supposed to help. So thank you. This is Michelle Alonso. I'm with Cowles and Thompson, a shareholder here. You'll see on the screen, you have my contact information. Angela Lopez is the senior shareholder here for the section as well. We do a lot of our presentations and webinars here live on YouTube and through Zoom presentations. If you have any desire to get any more information, please go and connect with us on social media. We are on LinkedIn, we're on YouTube, and soon we'll be joining a couple of Facebook Lives. We'll be trying that as well. If you have any information or questions that you would like to share with us about our presentations, feedback, we are always open to those. You have our email and our phone numbers there on the page, and we always welcome new subscribers. As a brief introduction, Cowles and Thompson's immigration section, we handle all forms of immigration, family-based, employment-based, and for programs like this is a special status sort of program recently has come in. If you have been following anything about immigration news, you understand it is constantly changing. All right, so what is this process for Venezuelans that was announced? Well, on October 12th, 2022, so just a couple of weeks ago, we got the announcement of what the government was going to do. Now, for some background, this process, if it looks and sounds a little familiar, it's taken a page from the process that was announced to help Ukrainians. So in what we saw streamlined to help with those that are dealing with the situation and the war and what's happening in Ukraine, DHS saw that this would be a process to also handle the influx of Venezuelans that we have coming in through the southern border. Now, there's a trade-off. If you've heard about what is happening on the border, or maybe you haven't, I will let you know. When this was announced, this program is going to be dealing with Venezuelans that are outside of the United States. So if you are inside of the United States already, this program may not be for you, but please stay tuned. So we'll go over the details. Now, those Venezuelans that are coming in through the southern border that have already started the trek through Latin America to come up to the U.S. and present. Beginning October 19th, they will be turned away. They will not be allowed to seek entry to come into the U.S. and apply for asylum. They will be in agreement with Mexico, processed and going through the process through the Mexican border. It's something that is maybe not very popular, but this is sort of the trade-off for this new Venezuelan program. So you'll see there, part of the announcement was effective immediately. Venezuelans who enter the U.S. between ports of entry without authorization will be returned. So that's what they are taking off the table. But what did they put on the table? Well, they've realized that there is a huge influx of folks coming in from Venezuela because of the situation in the country and a lot of the changes that are happening down in Latin America. And in order to allow for a lawful, orderly processing of these individuals, or even the immediate relatives of these Venezuelans, they've announced this process to parole them in. So you'll see there one of the quotes, it says, these actions make clear there is a lawful and orderly way for Venezuelans to enter the United States, and lawful entry is the only way. So you'll see right now the administration is making a very big push for this to be something that's done from the very beginning and processed while outside. So a couple of key points, and that was some background there regarding the program. So notes regarding eligibility. I can't emphasize this enough. Venezuelans outside the United States and their family members are those that are going to be impacted or allowed any sort of benefit through this program. If you are Venezuelan and inside the United States, this does not impact you. If you're already going through some other process or you're already in removal proceedings or orders of supervision, whatever the case may be, this is not contemplating you, but stay with us because this could be a way that you could help other relatives, family, friends, and loved ones out in Venezuela. Now, the beautiful thing about this program is that it will be, upon granting and everything being completed, those who benefit from them will be granted parole for 2 years. And that parole is going to give them access also to work authorization here in the United States. So they're coming in and they're sponsored. They're given permission to be here expressly for 2 years. And during those 2 years, once they get the employment authorization, they'll be able to legally work, pay taxes, have access to state IDs here as well. So after October 19th, again, that's a very important date. No Venezuelans will be processed through any port of entry and will be returned to Mexico. They do not want any irregular admissions going through also Panama. The agreement with Mexico also contemplates the country of Panama as well. And one other thing to really take note, this is another push by the government to utilize their portal. So it's this My USCIS portal. You'll see there on the screen that I'm sharing. This website and this portal, and then you'll see a subsequent app, is going to be where all this communication and all filing is going to be going through. They are streamlining this process. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We will have reserved a couple of Q&A issues now for you to have, so you can ask us some questions. So who are we talking about? Citizens of Venezuela. They also expressly talk about Venezuelan nationals or their immediate family members, because we know while you may be a citizen of Venezuela or national, in the last recent years, there might have been reasons for you to have left the country before, and you may be in another country. Another issue, especially with Venezuelans, is the necessity to have a valid passport. Now, no one is immune to the fact that passport issuance through Venezuela has been extremely difficult for years now. And the US government has recognized that, and they have put in place certain measures of how they're going to regard the passport requirement. And I do have a slide on that here in a little bit. These individuals that are coming through this program will be cleared and vetted through for security reasons, right? For security purposes, they'll be looking at biometric data. And what's also really important to note about this process is they're looking at public health concerns as well. So anyone who is applying and will be coming in will have to meet all vaccination requirements. And so that brings up including the COVID-19 vaccination. So I know that some issues about that have allowed for exceptions, but they've made in the announcements for public health reasons, those requirements will be definitely imposed here. Another one, if you are a permanent resident of another country, or you hold some sort of refugee or asylee status, they will not consider you. Now, there is a caveat. Even though you may hold refugee status, asylee status, some sort of permanent resident status in a third country, if you are the immediate family member of someone else who's traveling, you can come in. So there's a lot of these little exceptions. I think what we're telling folks is, if you think you apply, you go for it, because what they're going to tell you is maybe no, but it's one way you can go. Obviously, if you're inside the United States, you wouldn't qualify, but there's that. And the other important caveat, if you've been ordered or removed within the last 5 years, you won't qualify. So very important, if you have any immigration history and you've been outside and you think, well, maybe, just maybe I'll qualify, this is when you definitely want to reach out to your immigration attorney, someone who has familiarity with how these little nuanced exceptions will possibly apply to your case. And again, I can't emphasize enough, this process is really to benefit those who are not in the United States at this time. You saw through the announcement, the excerpts that we had there, they're very clear about how they want this to be streamlined, to bring people in and not contemplate those who are already here. And the first step, the most important one, is the financial sponsor supporter. Now, this is very interesting, and this also opens the doors to a lot of folks. The person has to be here in some sort of lawful status, but that can include people who have TPS. That's a lawful status here. It also contemplates non-immigrant visa holders. So if you're here in a non-immigrant visa status, you could also be a supporter and submit your I-134 on behalf of each beneficiary. Now, the supporter isn't just filing the application. There is quite a bit of information in the publication from the government that what they contemplate means being a financial supporter. And I thought this was really interesting. You'll see they're willing to receive, maintain, and support the beneficiary listed in Form I-134 for the duration of the parole. So for 2 years, you're essentially under contract or, in this agreement with the government that you're going to be maintaining this beneficiary. Now, you'll see in the next slide, there's got to be a 134 filed for each beneficiary that wants to come through on this program. So they're getting an attestation for each individual that's going to be accounted for. Now, what I don't have listed on this slide is the additional details that they want. They're saying that this also includes assisting them with housing, assisting them with having proper access to care, and applying for employment authorization and communicating with other agencies regarding any other assistance that might be available. So this is not necessarily something where you could file the I-134 and then they came in and you're done. This is contemplating something a little bit more involved on behalf of the sponsor or supporter and the beneficiaries that will be coming in. So keep that in mind. And a couple of things to keep in mind. I can't stress this enough. Email addresses are critical. There are multiple pages in the frequently asked questions that USCIS published that what happens if I can't get a hold. You cannot put in any dummy email addresses. They cannot be anything that cannot be verified. A lot of the steps through these processes and through the portal that they're utilizing, the email address is critical, and the passport number. So you need to be able to identify this to each beneficiary. What does that mean? Some minors may not have access to email. So who's the guardian who's going to be receiving them and putting their email on? Their communication with the government will be through email. We're not in the days of actual printed mail. This is how they're going to communicate. So it can't be just a junk email address either. So that's a very important note. Access to this process is free. Now, when we get to applying for employment authorization and seeking other benefits once the beneficiary is here, there will be fees associated with that. But this process of trying to submit an I-134 and get a beneficiary cleared, there are no government filing fees. Now, if you use the assistance of an attorney, definitely I'm assuming there'll be filing fees or maybe pro bono services. But if anyone comes to you or tells you for a fee, we can help you do this process, the government is charging XYZ, that's just not true. So just note to keep that in mind, because once a program is announced, inevitably, sometimes we'll see just scam artists take advantage of a very vulnerable population, and we don't want to have that happen here. The authorizing for this process is up to 24,000 Venezuelans. So there is a limited number. So there is this sort of push to, hey, if you have everything in order, let's go ahead and file sooner rather than later, because you do not want to miss out on those. If anything immigration has taught us is that when there's a cap on a certain number of visas or eligibility for any type of benefit, they go quickly. So just a quick mention, you'll see up on there, and this is posted directly from the government's website about how they're going to be handling passport issues with Venezuelans. The proroga that we know and is so infamous with Venezuelan nationals and their passports, there are dates there. You'll see they're very specific. If you look at your passport, look at your issuance date. If you have the proroga for the extension, you're generally looking at an additional 5 years beyond the expiration. That's what it is. But first things first, I would definitely suggest that you have any beneficiaries in mind, that they are getting that identity documentation, that passport ready, because that is going to be a critical part of actually bringing them over and processing through the port of entry once they're cleared. So again, passports, I know with our Venezuelan clientele, is always a little bit of a sticky issue because of the history that we've had with issuance of passports and renewals. please keep in mind the government is very much aware of this issue and they've addressed it as well. So keep in mind, we'll have to look at issuance dates, extensions, and see where your passport falls in here. So steps, it's 6 steps. You'll see they're just listed out there. First step is the US-based supporter sponsor files the I-134. So what does this tell me? I emphasize to folks all the time, the US sponsor initiates. So we already have specified beneficiaries. Why? Because the I-134 has to be filed for each beneficiary. They will not accept anything for an unnamed beneficiary. If you have someone who out of the goodness of their heart says, look, I just want to help these Venezuelans, I'm going to file it, and then whoever gets it, it's not contemplating. They want someone named, biographic data, passport, and an email address to be able to reach this individual. So it can't necessarily be unknown. The US-based sponsor, you'll see if you go to the USCIS website, what I will say is that they are contemplating entities also assisting, and they discuss how they will consider entities pulling resources together also. So there will need to be an individual named, but they will consider pooled resources to help. So just because maybe you individually may not, if you have an affiliation with an organization, maybe it's definitely something to look into because you could be potentially a sponsor nonetheless. Step 2 would be submit the biographic information. This is regarding the beneficiary. So again, we're going through the portal. Once you're on that My USCIS website, all communication is going to be there, and they want the biographic information of the named individual. That's going to be used for verification of requirements for security clearance. They're going to use that to compare it to vaccination records. They're going to use that to compare it to the passport and the admission document when they're being screened for parole. So lots happening. Number 3, submit the request through the CBP One mobile app. We're in 2022. Everything's done through an app. So now we have USCIS on board with not only an exclusive portal, but also with an app that's going to be assisting them to do any clearance. I will be honest, My USCIS, that portal has gotten a lot better over the last couple of years. I still have some hesitation, but given the ease that we've seen the Ukrainian process running through, I'm confident that they've worked out the bugs and this should go well. Again, though, it's very critical. I can't stress this enough. The email addresses for them to reach these beneficiaries. Step 4 would be advanced travel authorization. Now, the distinction there is advanced travel authorization. It's not an approval, and it's not saying, okay, we're at the end, because you'll see there's still step 5 and 6. Step 4 is just saying, look, you can board a plane, and with this information, you get to go to the port of entry. You have to fly. It's got to be through the beneficiary making and paying their own way to get on the flight and to come in. And once they get here, they seek parole at the port of entry. So they will be interviewed. They will be presenting all their documents and basically confirming that they are who they are. And the CBP officer at that port of entry will decide whether or not step 6 happens, whether or not they will actually parole you in. If they parole your beneficiary in. If they parole your beneficiary in, we already know that that grant will be for 2 years. And thus everything begins. The I-134 obligations of the sponsor kick in, because now you have to receive, maintain, and support this individual through the duration of the parole period, which is 2 years. So that's really the parole process. Now, I did do a little bit of research, and we communicate with peers across the country, and we have heard of a couple of cases that have already been submitted and approved. Now, when I say approved, the I-134 has been cleared. As far as I know, when I try to follow up with the attorneys this morning, they had not gone through the portal, and the beneficiary had not gone through yet to do the step 2 and begin that process. But the 134, at least for one of the cases, I know was approved in 2 weeks. So again, 24,000 visas. The door is open for this process. I would definitely encourage you to immediately get on board with anything that you have and meet with an attorney. Of course, we'd be more than happy to help as well, and see how possibly you could help these folks out. Let's see. And there is our contact information. Now, I did see a couple questions pop up already. So we can go ahead and go back to the questions, but Cowles and Thompson, here is our website right here and our contact information. So let me go ahead and stop share and I'll get to some of those questions because they're very good. Did I stop share? I think I did. All right. Okay, this one, I'm a TPS holder. Will I qualify? Yes, absolutely. TPS holders, if you're valid and that means you're here, and granted, if you've been on TPS since the beginning, you've had work authorization for a while, so you will have those financial documents available, which leads me to the next question. The next question is, how much is enough to sponsor? Now, this is where the USCIS has not been very clear about what they'll be using in terms of benchmarks, but practicing immigration law, we're not unfamiliar with the affidavit of support requirements when we're looking at immigrant sponsorship through family-based petitions. And those, there is a poverty guidelines that USCIS will follow when they're looking at immigrants that are coming over that they want to be sponsored through a family-based. There are certain requirements of how much one has to earn to support a family. So in that case, we will probably refer to those guidelines. As a matter of fact, when I was talking with Angela, that's the benchmark that we're going to be utilizing. And we suspect that if it's sufficient for immigrant visa processing, it should certainly be sufficient for something like this, which is a temporary benefit. On those, you have to show that the income is sufficient. Oftentimes we have supporters or sponsors who will have to show their assets, that they file taxes. So all of that is relevant information that can help us assess whether or not we think one would qualify. So let's see. This one, minors, unaccompanied minors. What about unaccompanied minors? Well, okay, she didn't say what about unaccompanied minors, but I will mention that each minor child, if they're being sponsored, needs to be listed. Now, there are restrictions on who is allowed to bring the minor child in. They will not let an unaccompanied minor, and maybe that was what they were asking about, come in. So those are very specific. If you want to discuss the actual exclusions on who they'll let come in, it's very important. With minor children, the government is very sensitive. As a matter of fact, they spend a good portion of the time explaining how if they deem someone is an unaccompanied minor, say you're trying to be reunited with a minor son or daughter, if they're not processed correctly, they will take them into custody. So they will be taken by the government and processed as an unaccompanied minor. So that is, I hope that answered your question. I do hope so. But yes, unaccompanied minors, very serious. It's one of those situations where they're going to be very careful about how it's processed. But again, you don't want to send your kid on a plane or send a child minor on a plane anyways to go through this process if you don't know that they're going to get cleared. So definitely, if we're talking about minor children, I would consult with an immigration attorney to go over and make sure that that child would qualify to finish, because the last thing you want to do is put a child on the plane thinking they're going to get processed and released to family, and then they're deemed that they can't come in through that process. Let's see. Oh, no, I guess that was the last question. Let's see, anybody put anything in the chat? Okay, so I did get one in the chat. With the passport expired in 2020, can you participate or apply? Well, if you are outside of the United States, yes, you could apply. If the passport is expired, let's see, and it's going to matter if you have the proroga or not, would determine whether or not you're eligible. I could definitely go back to that slide and show you, but let's see, if it expired in 2020, but you had the 5-year extension for the proroga, you would be fine. And let's see, I have another question. How on the chat, how much can we help with the secondary step from the US? Okay, the secondary step, it doesn't seem like it's a lot of help, because what the beneficiary is going to be doing is everything on their end. So if you have access to their My USCIS portal, be careful. And I will say, because you know how when you click through phones or for contracts, you're just like, yeah, clear, accept, and you want to move on. I get a little bit nervous, or I want folks to be cognizant of those terms and conditions when you're clicking yes or accept, especially on the USCIS portal. Because if there is at any point in time that a part where they're saying, okay, yes, I'm so-and-so and I attest, and you're trying to help them, you don't ever want it to ping that they were not the ones actually attesting. And maybe that's just me being a little bit too conservative, but I do think it's one of those things that maybe FaceTiming. I know with my parents and with older folks, we FaceTime a lot. Like, show me what's going on the app, show me here what's going on, and we can work you, help you and assist you through that app. Okay. Let's see. And then, so I don't know if that answered your question, but there is this savviness that's sort of implicated in this process, which again makes me nervous, because when I deal with a lot of my clients in Latin America, there's not a lot that we do through these portals. So this is different. But like I said, the reason why this looks, smells, and maybe is a little bit familiar is because this is really following on the heels of the process for Ukrainians. So they've kind of taken a page from that, and they're using this to process what they know is a huge wave of Venezuelans that are coming our way. Okay, well, I believe I've answered all. Oh, wait, hold on. This one just came in. Will this program be extended? Too soon to tell. I will honestly say it is too soon to tell. Now, I think like with any program, especially something new like this, because this is not necessarily, there's no change in law. But this process that was initiated and brought on, there is contemplation of, so we're bringing you in and we're giving you 2 years. This is 2 years for them to do something else, and also to see what happens. The world is changing. We all can look back at the last couple years and know that we need to be able, as a society, pivot. And I think we've done well. So if anything, I do hope that this 2-year grant is just going to be sort of the Band-Aid that leads to something a little bit more definitive and well for all these recipients, and for their family, friends, and members that are here. I mean, I know the split of the family is incredibly hard, and especially for years that we've been seeing the trickle of Venezuelans over the last couple of years, it has gotten significant because of the humanitarian crisis there. So we applaud the government for taking some sort of action to address this humanitarian issue, and we hope to see continued efforts for a more permanent solution. Hold on, more questions come in. Time for the application. So the pending of the application, like I said, we've already seen reports where the I-134, the step one has already been cleared in a matter of 2 weeks. So like I said, I tried to get a follow-up from that attorney to find out, hey, has the person gone through the portal? Have they gone through the communication? Have they had to do any of the IT help with their end? I didn't get a response, but it's one of those things. Again, if you think that you have all your documentation and you qualify as a sponsor and you know these named people, I would not wait. I would definitely go through the I-134, make sure it can be supported. One thing I will mention, the I-134, if they deem it insufficient, in most immigration documents or processes, they give you what's called an RFE, a request for evidence, a chance to supplement it. There's no indication here that they would be issuing those RFEs. They'll just say, no, you don't qualify. So it's going to be it's very, very important that you submit a very easily approvable, I think, I-134 application, or one that's well supported financially, in order to get a greater chance that you won't have a delay and have to resubmit. Okay, I hope that answered your question. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of questions about this process and what's to come. And we're going to see in real time here very soon, as these applications are being submitted and processed, we're going to hear about what's going on. And we hope to share up-to-date news and any news alerts. So on that note, I think we'll go ahead and end this short video, and just thank you for your time. We do appreciate it. And please keep us in mind and follow us on social media so we can give you late breaking news and updates to things like this parole process or any other process that might apply to you. Again, this is Michelle Alonso with Cowles Thompson. Thank you for your time. Please contact us if you need any immigration help.